Welcome to Older Militarist Radio TV, and we're lifelong Catholics. And what we do is all for free, and for our love of Jesus Christ, and for our Holy Mother, the Church. We'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. We are with Brother Alexis Bonello, and today we're going to be talking about how Michigan State is now handing over their role in all of this to the Office of Public Safety. Then we'll see where the Office of Public Safety sends Jack beside Saigon for his fateful day and hour.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio TV for this life of Jack Ryan, Catholic hero, one of the early greats in American government service. He spent his whole life serving the American people through the U.S. government, whether it was in the Air Force or the FBI, the Office of Public Security, and even in Vietnam. He was an ardent anti-communist. He really wanted to help the Catholic government in South Vietnam and even the Buddhist people there. So wonderful example of that noble spirit of doing something greater than just outside of your own little circle of friends and stuff. And this is why we're featuring Jack, because Order Militaris Catholicus, we're a group of Catholics who want to do great things for people who are in need. We don't work within the governments or with governments, but nevertheless, we still respect and admire the generosity and the nobility of Catholics who've come before us, whether they've worked in private organizations or in the government. So we think it's very important to admire these kind of personal characteristics and study their lives to find the best advice on how to conduct our own. So we've done the life of Jack from his birth. We went through his high school years, his Air Force years, FBI, the career, and he's been having problems now in South Vietnam. He's head of the American delegation, Office of Public Security, that is helping the South Vietnamese government develop a civilian police force that can uphold a democratic state. In the last program, we discovered the conflict he's having with the military and with the CIA. And he was there as part of a program that was being run by the Michigan State University. He was getting funding to do that. And he was actually on the staff of the Michigan State University for this operation. So now things begin to change, and from that academic environment to something more controlled by the government. So why did this change take place, and when did it take place, and who was behind it, AJ?
So it starts off with Michigan State staff members in Vietnam welcomed Ralph H. Smuckler in 1958 as a replacement for Wesley Fischel, a development that left him less fearful of offering advice that might offend Fischel's close friend, Ego Din Diem. Everybody felt relieved once Wes was gone. Now we may be able to make some real progress without having to overcome his subtle obstructionist tactics, Jack wrote to Arthur Brandstatter, head of the police administration program on the MSU campus in East Lansing. Wes allowed himself to be trapped and kept telling us that the Vietnamese government was ready to move. He continued to express full confidence to the point of taking their side against his own police advisory staff. Jack was especially concerned that Michigan State could be made the whipping boy for wasteful spending, security lapses, and repression against Dim's political opponents, all enabled by Fischel's unwillingness to push the president to reform. Jack felt the U.S. aid mission, military advisors, and embassy all bore as much, if not more, of the responsibility. As you know, our own government has some slippery slope characters too, he wrote to Brandstatter. Rid officials' unwillingness to pressure Diem on reform, Michigan State pushed ahead only to encounter Vietnamese officials willing to make changes, but powerless to do so.
Yeah, so now for those who haven't been watching all our episodes, the government in South Vietnam at this time is run by Catholics. Diem is a Catholic, and they're a very small minority, about 5%. And they're the Vietnamese who converted to the Catholic religion during the French colonial period. But the government I don't think there's anyone who considers the government of Diem have been honest and upright and not authoritarian. And some might even use the word fascist to kind of explain. But in the post-World War II epoch, that was, and even in Africa, in the colonial, ex-colonial empires, was often what happened with Western-style governments who were really colonial natives. So Jack, though, he was a Catholic, didn't hide the fact. It's just because it was a government run by Catholics, he wasn't going to be quiet about the problems because he was a very upright and high-minded man. And
But as the days and weeks passed within action, the Michigan State team grew to realize that the cabinet official had little authority, and he never again expressed a similar view. Some of the division's most important work included helping to build communication networks, providing mobile radios, telephones, teletype systems, and a call box system. Michigan State provided the equipment through U.S. military surplus or by contracts with private companies. Michigan State in 1958 also oversaw the opening of the National Police Academy near Cape St. Jacques on Vietnam's southeast coast, with the inaugural class of 300 recruits. By this time, the university's police administration division had been involved in the training or advising of more than 3,000 Vietnamese in various law enforcement agencies. Some of the trainees also traveled to the U.S. for instruction that included classes at the university campus in East Lansing.
truly amazing and monumental work that they were involved in. Uh,
So, the university's public administration division, the program's other branch in Saigon, was measuring much of its success by its training of Vietnam's swelling civil service corps. In addition, it had successfully assisted in resettling refugees from the north, an effort judged on the surface to be a success, although not so much if examined closely. But while Smuckler might not have had much to boast about with public administration, that division also didn't present the challenges of the police division with the unresolved reorganization of South Vietnam Security Force. Diem continued to blur the lines between the Army, the Civil Guard, the Army, the Self Defense Corps, the militia in Vietnamese Bureau of Investigation, so mostly referred to as the Surete. His brother Neo guided all the security forces with one primary goal: eliminating the president's enemies, whether they be Viet Cong or merely those who opposing political views. By jumbling the forces' role and responsibilities, the corrupt government also was able to request aid through multiple U.S. channels in order to get what it wanted.
mhm. And this is one of, not saying the Vietnam War was caused by the South Vietnamese government, but the South Vietnamese government wasn't as corrupt as it was. The Viet Cong certainly wouldn't have had the advantage in this war. So, what year does Michigan State give up the reins and OPS take over the Office of Public Security?
Yes, so Jack was told to consider either two of the two promising career possibilities. He knew that Hoyt was expected to return to the United States in the summer of 1959, which would result in the promotion to Chief of the Police Administration Division in Saigon through the end of the expected third contract. But he has also been appointed as assistant professor and granted tenure with the opportunity to resume teaching in East Lansing for the 1959-1960 school year. Jack had no immediate deadline for a decision, and other matters com- competed for his attention. The VBI regional director and close personal friend learned that his job had been eliminated when he returned from training in the United States. He was told that his local unit was being restructured to move more authority to central headquarters in Saigon. He also disclosed to Jack that DMs controlling Cam Lao political party often assigned people considered untrustworthy to receive training in the U.S., sometimes allowing them to be educated for positions for which they would never be appointed. The trips abroad simply got unwanted personnel out of the way. Michigan State University economic professor Stanley K. Steinbaum reported meeting a group of Vietnamese police trainees in San Francisco on the way to the East Lansing. So,
And when you say they ended this position, you mean Jack's position was ended?
yeah.
So this is the effect of if you're actually pointing out the problems. It must have been
So,
a request of the DM government.
Michigan State's third contract was signed in 1959, but it was only a 3-year deal. It was to run through 1962, but its police advisory work was on its way out. The State Department began shipping in team members from the Public Safety Division to take over. Ingle had gotten his wish. Public safety's appearance on the scene heralded a new period of change in Saigon. The cocktail and reception circuits are going full blast these days. Arrivals, departures, and visits of various VIPs. Jack wrote to his uncle Jack in Los Angeles. Michigan State transfers of duties to the government began with shedding of security unit run by the CIA personnel, which it called portions of the police program from which the university, for various reasons, preferred to withdraw. The unit was folded easily into the Public Safety Division Vietnam operation. Jack was impressed with the newly named Public Safety Chief of Saigon, Frank E. Walton, a World War II and Korean War vet with experience in Los Angeles Police Department. He appears to have all the qualities necessary to handle the job, Jack wrote Brandstatter. Whether or not he will be given all the necessary freedom and backing remain to be seen. Jack began networking with public safety advisors in Southeast Asia, traveling to Thailand to meet with public safety's Thomas Naughton, a former FBI inspector who had been acquainted with his aunt Eileen from Chicago Bureau in 1930s. He later flew to Laos to meet with police advisor, who told his Uncle Jack in a letter, "We're having troubles in instituting police training programs. Should be very interesting." Back in Saigon, the CIA unit left Michigan State's police administration team just as Jack was elevated to head the division after White returned to Michigan. The promotion seemed to increase his focus on reputation. He had a reason to be concerned.
So what does he mean by he had a reason to be concerned? Because he was now going to be in the direct line of responsibility?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So in this third contract, it goes to 62. What does Jack end up doing in his office?
He becomes the chief OPS director in Saigon.
Mm-hmm. I think we covered this, but I'm not quite sure if I remember correctly. Does he already know that OPS is being run by the CIA or is controlled by them?
But you can. So he starts learning about all the different things going on, and more stuff coming up about the kickbacks that Michigan State was receiving for steering radio contracts to Motorola and his former employer on bids that were almost never the lowest. So this he learns all the dirt about why Michigan State had it hand over to the OPS. It was for
Because they were caught on managing kickbacks with a lot of corruption in the money. Yeah.
yeah.
In Sullivan's book, we're reading from the excellent book about the life of Jack Ryan. Show the book, AJ, before.
So,
The Murder of Jack Ryan. This is by Daniel P. Sullivan. It's an excellent book, and he's given us permission to talk about his book in his program, and I want to thank the author for that. The thing is, in this book, because you've read the whole thing already, does he mention how much money was flowing annually through Michigan State? What was the value of those contracts? Do we know?
no, we don't.
millions, tens of millions. We don't know.
Yeah, you could probably say that.
Hmm. Yeah, and like anything with government contracts, there's more money spent than there is oversight to make sure it's not misspent. But
So now that he's in charge of it all, he he now gets tasked by writing up the Ryan Plan.
okay, the Ryan plan. Okay, so what was this task, and what is this Ryan plan?
So Jack wrote to his brother George after settling into his quarters in Viet, Viet Thanh, Laos in the summer of 1961. Well, here we are, back out in the Far East in the land of turmoil, fear, and confusion. He was keeping a close eye on talks underway in Geneva, Switzerland, while the ceasefire was being observed. Meanwhile, the commies are continuing to chop away at Royal Laotian defense units here and there. He wrote, the ceasefire agreement is just another piece of paper to be totally disregarded as far as they are concerned. So, U.S. Ambassador Winthrop G. Brown directed him to draw up a plan as soon as possible for the organization and duties of police forces in the neutral Laos, and Jack submitted his proposal on August 1961, dubbed the Ryan Plan. Its stated objective was to assist the Royal Laotian government in the creation of the elite civil police organization, which would be so respected by the population as to permit development of necessary source of information on one hand, while making possible such recruitment, training, equipping, and leadership as to render it capable of efficiently handling subversion, terrorism, and crime on the other. So, Sullivan shrinks down the explanation for us to understand it better. Could be boiled down to the reorganization of the Laos National Police into 5 units: urban police, provincial, special police, immigration police, and criminal investigation, with a total of 6,000 men.
Hmm. Okay, boy, that was a big assignment to write up a whole plan for a national police force. And this was a plan submitted to the Office of Public Security or submitted to Congress?
Mm, False.
Okay. And now here I'll make a comment on this. So if you were ever get into a position where you're asked to write anything that would be submitted to Congress, you have to be aware that you're immediately stepping into a quagmire of politics, a swamp, as we say in modern American English. And your name goes out there with your proposal. And you can gather as many allies as enemies just because of a piece of paper with your name on it.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, all this, all these decisions made in Washington have to do with funding, and there is a big battle in Washington over who gets the money. And some of the people who want that money are very unscrupulous and are willing to go to great lengths to make sure that they get it and that other groups don't. And if your proposal is seen to be benefiting one side more than another, it can be serious deleterious consequences, which you would never have imagined, and you don't really merit because you're just writing a proposal. So someone asks you to write a proposal for funding or anything out of Washington, I would strongly advise against it unless you had powerful enemies and you're in a safe place, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this might be that ninth thing on the list of explaining how Jack ends up murdered in an indirect sort of way.
Oh, oh. Jack's vision for Lao security, a unit capable of developing and enlisting public support for the police, resembled his push for the Civil Guard in South Vietnam, but his Laotian plan included one important detail that had been lacking in his work with the Diem government: a requirement that all large U.S. funding and all building contract payments receive approval not only from the Laotian Police Director, but also from himself as the Public Safety Division Chief. Our embassy believes quite strongly that the civil police should be organized and trained according to the Ryan Plan, said a memo to Assistant Secretary of State W. Averill Harriman.
That was a memo written by Harriman. Okay, so just the fresh you have been watching all the episodes. Harriman is going to be the one who, while Kennedy's out of town, sends the cable that gets the CIA to overthrow the DM government in '63. It was, yes. So, and Harriman is undoubtedly one of the conspirators in the JFK assassination. So,
While Jack was executing the CIA's game plan for the police, the agency also was conducting a clandestine war in the background, arming and supplying Hmong fighters to battle communist forces. A U.S. government intent on a negotiated settlement had entrusted the CIA with irregular operations in Laos, a report noted later.
yes.
So that is the first time he, like, whoa, I'm working for Langley.
Yeah, well, he didn't know it yet. So this is why Harriman was pushing Jack's report, because the CIA was already controlling Office for Public Services. And so basically by saying Jack would have to sign off on anything, they would say they would be signing off on anything, which is another way of saying the funding coming through this program will be under our control. And well, Harriman was a crocodile, so.
Yeah. And then, oh, you want to know who the Secretary of State is? The guy who fired MacArthur.
Oh, really?
Secretary of State Dean Rusk acknowledged the need for maximizing Western influence in the Laotian government. I hope I'm saying that Laos, right to the people of Laos. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
But he put diplomacy first in withholding approval for the Ryan Plan in the fall of 1961. He pointed out to Ambassador Brown that the proposal lacked support from some Laotian factions and needed to accommodate France's desire for a role in training the
Gendarmerie.
yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
The local policing.
I think the word you're saying, Laotian, I think is Laotian is the way
Okay.
to pronounce it, Laotian. And I'm not saying I'm an expert either, but I think I've met one or two people from Laos, and that's how that we say it in English, Laotian. So, yeah, you know why Rusk wouldn't like MacArthur? MacArthur was big on respecting local traditions, cultures, peoples, and customs. Look at the great work MacArthur did in Japan. We'll talk more about this in the upcoming series that we're going to do on the life of MacArthur. So that doesn't fit into the CIA Skull and Bones idea. Their idea is to destroy traditional culture, societies, kingdoms, monarchies, and governments and place everything in Masonic control. And they're hip on creating and supporting the training of police around the world, because then they put the Freemasons in control of the police forces, and that guarantees, as I said before, that their members, when they commit a crime, get off and don't get prosecuted.
And you might have a point. We'll find out later on. This might be the 10th point.
Mm-hmm.
As in Vietnam, France's influence remained strong in Laos even after Indochina had fallen as a colony. While waiting approval of his formal plan for the Laotian
Mm-hmm.
police, Jack worked with a French intelligence officer in conducting training in firearms interrogation.
Okay, so really zealous guy out there building civilizations or helping these governments get off. And I think in the end, Laos stays out of the conflict. For a while, they have a communist government, and then they meld. But today, they're a pretty peaceful country, as far as from the news that ekes out. You almost never get any news from that. But and there's a lot of Catholics in Laos today. A lot of Laotians converting to Catholicism, although it's a Buddhist country.
So, however, Jack still saw a high priority for Laos and wanted stronger steps than President Kennedy was willing to take to prevent the communists from securing a foothold. It'll be a real shame if this country goes under. Believe me, he wrote to George. U.S. has suffered a severe loss of face here since Kennedy decided not to make a firm stand. The, the Laotians likened this failure to the one in Munich a few years back. One wonders how it is all going to end.
He's very outspoken in his letters. So, as a Catholic and an Irishman, he seems to have some affinity to Kennedy, who was likewise. But you see, he didn't let those kind of things keep him from saying what was true. And Kennedy wanted peace. He didn't want so much conflict. But uh, there's a big misunderstanding that peace is the cessation of conflict. No, peace is the acquisition of the and re-establishment of the order of justice. And so conflict isn't the evil thing there. It's sometimes conflict is necessary, but the way it was being done in the Cold War wasn't helping on both sides, because you had the CIA running death squads in countless countries around the world. That's not really how you win people over to your side.
In January 1962, President Kennedy ordered the creation of Special Group CI, or Counterintelligence, to assure unity of effort and use of all available resources with maximum effectiveness in preventing and resisting subversive insurgency. The group's high-level Thursday lunch meeting included Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy, CIA Director John McCone, Deputy Undersecretary of State Alexis Johnson, and General Lyman Linser, Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff. Also in attendance was Fowler Hamilton, Director of the newly created U.S. Agency for International Development, was responsible for handling foreign aid.
Yeah, Kennedy was big on foreign aid. You might remember he started the Peace Corps, which had high hopes, helping lots of people around the world. It didn't really work out, but had high hopes.
The State Department's Public Safety Division, Jack's employer, already was seen as the key piece in the Cold War chess match under CIA direction, but the division's role was about to grow much larger. A later policy statement further spelled out the mission of the Police Advisory Program: to maintain internal order. Most governments depend primarily on police, which normally constitute the first line of defense against subversion and insurgency. USAID was given responsibility to strengthen the capability of police and police paramilitary organizations to counter communist-inspired or exploited subversion and insurgency. But make no mistake, public safety was a CIA operation.
Yeah. Police also used to repress and protests and to defend buildings in cases of revolution. So they could be used for both systems. I don't know how you would use police to prevent communist insurgency unless you're arresting people handing out Marxist handbills. But
The Amory agency later described how Special Group CI decided to place police training within the State Department's foreign structure. We solved the problem in rather rude but practical fashion of saying, by God, aid will be responsible for it, but the brains are in CIA, so we'll move those brains over to aid. He recalled, so we just took the CIA man and gave them the mission of training police forces.
okay, so but this is like I said previously, almost all U.S. foreign activities are going to have CIA elements embedded in it as part of their cover, but it's also a control system, because the CIA originally had good and high goals, but since it was founded by Skull and Bones men, its real purpose is to control the U.S. government by that Masonic lodge. And so that is never disclosed and never admitted. But to achieve that purpose, the CIA has to infiltrate almost every other organization in the government, especially in the foreign arena.
In typical Washington fashion, the high priority attached to foreign police training required a display of bureaucratic symbolism. The Public Safety Division became the Office of Public Safety, to be administered by USAID within the State Department. Oh, yay. Now he's under Harriman and Rusk.
Yeah, so what could go wrong? This has been an interesting interlude. What will we be covering on our next program, AJ, about in the life of Jack?
So he goes, let's see. He goes to Indonesia, then it's actually really peaceful there for him.
In comparison.
Brings his second wife and family,
Mhm.
and they enjoy a lot of peaceful time there.
Okay, so thank you for having me on Order Militaris Radio TV for I think this was our 7th installment of the life of Jack Ryan.
Yep. This is Order Military Studio TV signing off. Asphalt.
Dear Salt.